Captain Elias Kane had seen many battles in space, but nothing like the one burning in front of him. The sky above the planet Zarian was filled with fire and broken ships. Human warships and alien cruisers were tearing each other apart in cold silence. Explosions flashed like angry stars, and metal debris rained into the planet's dark clouds. Inside his small fighter jet, warning alarms screamed as enemy lasers ripped through his squadron. One by one, human pilots disappeared from his radar. Kane's hand stayed steady on the controls, but his heart was heavy because he knew they were losing. The alien empire was stronger, faster, and more advanced. This mission was supposed to be a simple strike, but had become a trap. A massive alien battleship appeared from hyperspace behind them and destroyed the human command carrier in seconds. The shockwave hit Kane's fighter and damaged his engines. Smoke filled his cockpit and his controls began to fail. He had only two choices: stay and die in space, or crash land on the enemy planet below. Kane made his decision in 1 second and pushed his fighter toward the planet's surface. His ship burned as it entered the atmosphere. Fire covered his wings, and the ground rushed up fast. He whispered a quiet goodbye to Earth as his fighter smashed into the forest of Zarian. The crash was violent. Trees exploded into splinters, and metal tore apart. When Kane opened his eyes, everything was silent except for the sound of crackling fire. He pulled himself out of the broken cockpit, his armor damaged and his side bleeding. The alien world around him was dark purple, with tall, glowing plants and strange mist moving through the air. He knew he was deep inside enemy territory, and if alien patrols found him, he would not survive long. Kane activated his emergency beacon, but it was too weak to send a signal into space. He was alone on a hostile planet where humans were hated. Suddenly, he heard distant explosions and the sound of alien weapons firing. He moved carefully through the forest toward the noise, thinking maybe he could find transport or hide until rescue came. As he reached a rocky hill, he saw something unexpected below. A royal alien convoy was under attack. Sleek black vehicles with golden symbols were surrounded by armored rebel fighters. Plasma blasts lit up the clearing as guards fell one by one. Kane recognized the symbol on the vehicles from military briefings. It belonged to the alien queen herself. This was no normal convoy. This was royal blood. One vehicle exploded, and from the burning wreckage a small alien figure stumbled out. She was young, smaller than the others, her silver armor cracked. Her glowing blue eyes were filled with fear as rebels closed in around her. Kane froze for a second because this was the enemy, the same empire that destroyed human colonies without mercy, the same rulers who called humans weak and primitive. Helping her meant risking his life for someone who would never help his people. A rebel raised his weapon toward the young alien girl, and in that moment Kane stopped thinking about war. He only saw a child about to die. Without hesitation, he stepped out from the shadows and opened fire. His rifle roared across the clearing. Rebels turned in shock as human bullets tore through their armor. Kane moved fast and fearless, dragging the alien girl behind a broken vehicle. Plasma shots burned the air around them. One blast hit Kane's shoulder, but he kept fighting. He threw a grenade that forced the rebels to fall back. The young alien stared at him with confusion because she had been taught that humans were monsters. Kane spoke calmly and told her to stay low, even though he knew she might not understand his language. More rebels rushed toward them, and Kane stood between them and the girl like a wall of steel. His armor cracked under heavy fire, and blood ran down his arm, but he did not move. Finally, distant royal ships appeared in the sky, and rebel fighters began to retreat. Seeing reinforcement arrive, Kane dropped to one knee. Exhausted and wounded, alien royal guards surrounded the clearing and aimed their weapons at him. The young alien girl quickly stood in front of Kane to protect him, speaking urgently in her language. The guards hesitated when they recognized her face, because she was not just any child, she was the daughter of the alien queen. Miles away inside a towering crystal palace, the queen received a report that changed everything. Her daughter had been attacked, and a human soldier had risked his life to save her. The queen did not believe it at first, because humans were supposed to be her enemies. As Kane collapsed onto the cold alien ground, he did not know that his choice would shake two civilizations. And if you want to see how one human decision can change a war between stars, gently consider subscribing to this channel and stay with the story, because this is only the beginning. The alien royal guards did not lower their weapons even after the rebels disappeared into the dark forest. The clearing was still burning, smoke rising into the purple sky, and Captain Elias Kane was on his knees, bleeding and surrounded by soldiers who saw him as an enemy. The young alien girl stood in front of him with shaking hands raised, speaking fast in her own language. Her voice was sharp but desperate, and the guards slowly stepped back when they recognized her royal crest glowing on her armor. She turned and looked at Kane with confusion in her bright blue eyes, as if she could not understand why a human soldier would protect her instead of finishing the attack. Kane tried to stand, but pain shot through his side and forced him back down. The commander of the royal guards approached carefully, his tall silver armor marked with battle scars. He studied Kane like a dangerous animal that could strike at any moment. After a long silence, he ordered his soldiers to secure the area and bring the princess to safety. 2 guards helped the young girl toward one of the remaining vehicles, but she refused to move until Kane was lifted from the ground. She spoke again, slower this time, pointing at the human and then at the rebels' dead bodies. The commander finally gave a cold nod, and Kane was grabbed by 2 armored guards, his weapons taken away, his hands locked in glowing restraints. Even wounded, he did not fight back, because he knew resistance would mean death. They placed him inside a transport ship, but instead of flying to the capital, the convoy moved deeper into the forest. The commander did not trust open skies after the ambush. Inside the dim transport cabin, Kane sat across from the alien princess, guarded by silent soldiers. The room hummed with alien technology, soft blue lights running along the walls. The princess kept staring at him, studying his face as if searching for something. Finally, she spoke in broken human language, asking him why he helped her. Her voice was softer now, no longer filled with fear, but with curiosity. Kane hesitated before answering. Because anything he said could decide his fate, he simply told her that she was a child and children should not die in war. The guards reacted with anger at his words, but the princess raised her hand to silence them. She looked down for a moment, thinking deeply, because she had been taught since birth that humans were violent and cruel creatures. Yet this human had stepped into certain death for her. Outside the vehicle, the forest suddenly shook with another explosion. The convoy stopped hard, and warning lights flashed inside the cabin. The rebel group had returned with heavier weapons. Plasma rockets slammed into the shield of the transport ship. The commander shouted orders, and soldiers rushed out to defend the princess. Kane felt the vehicle tilt as another blast hit. One explosion destroyed the front escort craft, sending metal raining across the clearing. The rebels were not ordinary fighters. They moved with discipline and knew exactly where to strike. This was planned. The princess looked at Kane with fear again, and in that moment he understood that she was not safe. Even with her own army around her, a rocket tore through the transport wall, throwing everyone to the ground. Smoke filled the cabin and alien guards fell under heavy fire. Kane saw a rebel soldier charging toward the princess with a blade glowing red in his hand. Without thinking, Kane forced himself up despite the restraints on his wrists. He slammed his shoulder into the attacker, knocking both of them to the floor. The blade cut into Kane's arm, but he grabbed the rebel and held him back long enough for a royal guard to shoot him down. The princess stared in shock as Kane's blood dripped onto the metal floor. The commander looked at Kane differently now, not with hatred but with doubt, because twice this human had protected royal blood. More rebels pushed forward, and the situation became worse. The convoy was surrounded and shields were failing. The commander made a quick decision to split the remaining forces and draw the rebels away. He ordered 2 guards to take the princess through a hidden forest tunnel used for emergency escape. As they moved, the princess suddenly turned back and ordered that Kane come with them. The commander hesitated but saw no other option. If the rebels captured the human alive, they might learn secrets about both sides. Kane was dragged along through thick glowing plants and narrow stone paths, explosions echoing behind them. The tunnel entrance was hidden under heavy roots of giant trees. Inside it was dark and cold, lit only by faint crystals in the walls. They moved fast through the underground path while rebel forces searched above. Kane was weak from blood loss, but kept walking, refusing to fall. After several minutes, the group reached a secure chamber deep beneath the forest, the entrance, sealed behind them with heavy stone doors. For the first time since the crash, there was silence. The princess removed her helmet and looked directly at Kane. Her expression was no longer confusion, but something deeper, something dangerous to the Empire's beliefs. She realized that the war she had been raised to hate might not be as simple as she was told. Far away in the Crystal Palace, the alien queen received another urgent report. The rebel attack had continued. Her daughter was alive, but hidden underground. And once again, the human soldier had protected her. The queen's eyes narrowed with disbelief and rising anger. Because if this story was true, it could weaken the image of humans as monsters, and that truth could be more dangerous than war itself. Deep in the hidden chamber, wounded and surrounded by enemies, Captain Elias Kane understood that saving the princess was only the beginning. Now he was trapped in the heart of an empire that wanted his people destroyed, and outside the tunnel, the rebels were still hunting them in the dark. Inside the towering crystal palace of Zarian, the alien queen stood before a wall of glowing stars that represented her empire. Her tall silver crown reflected the light of distant galaxies, and her cold blue eyes watched the moving symbols of war. Reports streamed in from commanders across the planet. Rebel forces were growing bold, royal patrols were failing, and now something impossible had happened. A human soldier had protected her daughter not once but twice. The queen crushed the data. Crystal in her hand, its shards falling like frozen tears to the floor. She did not believe in coincidence. She did not believe in mercy from humans. For years she had watched their fleets expand, their colonies grow, their soldiers fight with reckless courage. Humans were dangerous because they were unpredictable, and unpredictable enemies could not be controlled. She demanded full details of the forest ambush. Every guard who survived was brought before her holographic chamber to repeat the story again and again. Each one said the same thing. The human could have escaped. He had the chance during the first attack. But he stepped forward instead. He shielded the princess with his own body. He fought rebels while wounded, and he never once tried to harm her. The queen's anger grew not because of betrayal, but because of doubt. If her people learned that a human had acted with honor, the simple story of good and evil would begin to break, and an empire built on fear could not afford confusion. She ordered her elite shadow guard to prepare for immediate deployment. These were her most loyal warriors, trained since birth, silent as space and deadly as vacuum. Their mission was clear: locate the princess, eliminate any rebel threat, and bring the human soldier to the palace alive. The last order shocked her advisors, but none dared to question her. The queen wanted to see this human with her own eyes. She wanted to understand what kind of creature risked death for an enemy. Child, deep beneath the forest, in the hidden stone chamber, Captain Elias Kane struggled to stay conscious. Alien medics moved around him with glowing instruments, sealing his wounds with advanced healing light. He expected torture or imprisonment, but instead they treated his injuries with careful precision. The princess stood nearby, watching every movement, refusing to leave. She had removed her royal armor, and without it she looked even younger, almost fragile. Kane noticed that despite the advanced technology around them, fear still lived in her eyes. The commander of the royal guards entered the chamber and informed them that rebel forces were searching the forest with heavy scanners. The hidden tunnel might not remain secret for long. Kane realized that the rebels were not simply attackers. They were organized and determined. Someone powerful was guiding them. Suddenly the chamber lights flickered, and a distant rumble echoed through the stone walls. The rebels had found another entrance. Panic spread among the guards as defensive shields activated around the room. The princess looked at Kane again, as if searching for reassurance, and he forced himself to stand even though pain burned through his body. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his will. Yet he stepped closer to the entrance as if ready to fight again. Before the first rebel could break through, a new sound filled the air, a deep vibration like thunder from the sky above. The ground trembled as Dark ships descended through the forest canopy, their hulls marked with the royal crest of the Queen. The Shadow Guard had arrived. They moved with terrifying speed, cutting through rebel forces without hesitation. Their weapons were silent but deadly, leaving glowing lines in the air where enemies once stood. Within minutes, the rebel assault collapsed. Survivors fled into the wilderness, hunted by royal drones inside the chamber. The heavy stone doors opened, and the Shadow Guard commander stepped inside, kneeling before the princess in absolute loyalty. He then turned his helmeted gaze toward Kane, studying him with unreadable silence. Kane expected to be executed on the spot, but instead he was placed in secure restraints and informed that the Queen herself demanded his presence. The princess immediately protested. Her voice sharp and commanding, she declared that the human was under her protection. The Shadow Guard commander responded calmly that the Queen's will was absolute, and the human would not be harmed without judgment. As they prepared to leave the underground chamber, Kane looked back at the dark tunnel where he had nearly died twice. He understood that his situation had become more dangerous than any battlefield. He was no longer just a stranded soldier. He was now a symbol that could either ignite greater war or create something no one expected. High above, inside the Crystal Palace, the Queen watched the transport carrying her daughter and the human approach through the clouds. Her expression was unreadable, but her mind was racing. If the human was lying, she would expose him and use his death as proof of human cruelty. But if he was telling the truth, if his actions were real, then everything she believed about humanity would begin to change. And change inside an empire was far more dangerous than rebellion. As the transport doors opened within the palace hangar, and Kane was escorted into the heart of alien power, he felt the weight of countless alien eyes watching him, waiting for one mistake, one wrong word, one sign of weakness, because in the presence of a furious queen, even a hero could quickly become an enemy. The massive doors of the royal hangar closed behind Captain Elias Kane with a deep metallic echo, sealing him inside the heart of the alien empire. Tall crystal towers stretched above him, glowing with cold blue light, and hundreds of alien soldiers lined the walls in perfect silence. Their armor reflected his wounded figure, as if reminding him how small and alone he truly was. The Shadow Guard forced him forward through long, shining corridors toward the central judgment hall. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of fear, but because he knew this moment could decide the fate of more than just his own life. At the end of the hall stood the alien queen upon her elevated throne, her silver robes flowing like liquid light. Her presence filled the chamber with pressure so strong it felt like gravity itself had increased. The princess stood beside her mother, no longer looking afraid, but determined. Kane was pushed to his knees in the center of the hall, his restraints still glowing around his wrists. The entire court watched him as if he were a strange animal captured from a distant world. The queen's voice finally broke the silence. Calm, but sharp as a blade, she demanded to know why a human soldier would risk everything to protect the child of his enemy. Kane lifted his head slowly, ignoring the pain in his body. He did not speak with anger or pride. He simply answered that war was between armies, not children. A quiet wave moved through the court at his words. Some aliens looked confused, others offended. The queen's eyes narrowed, studying him carefully. Before she could speak again, an urgent alarm echoed through the palace walls. The glowing symbols above the throne changed from blue to red. A commander rushed forward and announced that rebel forces had launched a direct assault on the capital itself. Large warships had appeared from hidden positions beyond the planet's rings. They were moving fast and targeting the palace shield generators. The hall erupted into controlled chaos as officers began shouting orders. The queen remained standing, her face calm but filled with fury. She ordered full defensive response, but reports came in that the rebels had inside support and were disabling shield towers one by one. The palace trembled as distant explosions shook the city. The princess stepped closer to her mother, fear returning to her eyes. Kane understood immediately what this meant. The rebels were not just fighting for power. They wanted the royal bloodline erased. Suddenly, a violent blast struck the outer palace wall, sending shock waves through the chamber. Sections of the ceiling cracked, and debris fell among the guards. Rebel strike forces had breached the outer defense ring. The Shadow Guard formed a defensive circle around the Queen and Princess, but more explosions followed. Closer this time, Kane saw something in the chaos that others did not. A group of rebels wearing stolen royal armor were moving through side corridors toward the throne hall. Their movements were too precise, too direct. They knew exactly where to strike. Kane turned toward the nearest guard and warned them, but no one listened to a human prisoner. Then the side doors burst open, and rebel soldiers rushed into the hall with plasma weapons blazing. The first line of royal guards fell instantly. The throne room became a battlefield in seconds. The Queen was rushed toward a hidden exit, but rebel fire cut off the path. Smoke filled the chamber, screams echoed, and glowing energy blasts lit up the crystal walls. Kane saw one rebel aiming directly at the princess, who had been separated in the confusion. Without hesitation, he forced himself to his feet and slammed his restrained hands into the guard beside him. Knocking the weapon free, he grabbed the fallen plasma rifle and stepped between the rebel and the princess just as the shot was fired. The blast struck Kane's armor, throwing him backward, but he did not fall. He returned fire with fierce precision, driving the attacker back. More rebels turned toward him in shock. A human fighting to defend the alien queen was something they had never expected. Kane moved with pure instinct, positioning himself in front of the princess, absorbing shots, firing only when necessary. Each movement was painful, but he ignored it. The Shadow Guard, seeing his stand, regrouped and joined his defense. Slowly they pushed the rebels back toward the shattered doors. The Queen herself watched from behind a fallen pillar, witnessing the human soldier shielding her daughter once again with his own body. A final explosion rocked the chamber as royal reinforcements stormed inside, overwhelming the remaining attackers. Silence slowly returned, broken only by the crackle of burning debris. Kane's legs finally gave out, and he collapsed to one knee, dropping the alien weapon. His armor was cracked. Smoke rising from impact marks across his chest. The princess rushed to his side without caring who was watching, kneeling beside him as he struggled to breathe. The Shadow Guard surrounded them once more, but this time their weapons were not aimed at him. The Queen stepped forward slowly, her powerful presence filling the broken throne room. She looked down at the human who had just defended her bloodline inside her own palace. Her voice was no longer filled with anger, but with something far more dangerous, realization. In that moment, she understood that this soldier was not acting for politics or reward. He was acting from something deeper that her empire did not fully understand. As medics carried Kane away, unconscious and burned, the Queen turned to her commanders and gave a single order that would shake the stars. No one was to harm the human, because the war they were fighting had just changed in a way none of them had expected. Captain Elias Kane woke to silence, so deep, almost felt unreal. The sound of battle was gone, replaced by a soft humming that came from the glowing walls around him. He tried to move, but realized he was lying on a smooth platform inside a medical chamber. Strange alien devices floated above his body, scanning and repairing burned armor and wounded flesh with beams of pale blue light. For a brief second, he wondered if he had died, but the sharp pain in his chest reminded him he was still alive. A transparent energy barrier surrounded the platform, not as a prison, but as protection. He slowly turned his head and saw tall figures standing beyond the barrier, Shadow Guard soldiers watching without speaking. Their presence was not hostile this time, only cautious. The chamber doors finally opened with a quiet hiss, and the alien queen herself stepped inside. Her silver robes moved softly behind her, and the air seemed heavier the moment she entered. Kane forced himself to sit up despite the pain, because he refused to appear weak before a ruler who had every reason to hate him. The guards tensed, but the queen raised her hand, and they remained still. For several seconds, she simply looked at him, studying his face, his wounds, and the human determination that still burned in his eyes. She asked him directly why he continued to protect her daughter even after being captured. Even after standing inside the palace of his enemy, Kane did not look away. He told her the same answer he had given before, that a child was not a weapon and not a symbol of war. He said he did not fight for politics in that moment. He fought because it was right. The queen walked slowly around the platform, as if circling a mystery she could not solve. She had ruled for decades through strength and fear, believing humans were reckless and dangerous creatures driven by ambition. Yet this soldier had risked his life 3 times without asking for reward or mercy. She demanded to know if he expected peace in return for his actions. Cain gave a small, tired shake of his head. He said he expected nothing and that he would likely never see Earth again. The room grew even quieter at those words, because there was no bargaining in his voice, only acceptance. Before the queen could respond, the chamber doors opened again and the princess entered, ignoring protocol and the shocked expressions of the guards. She walked straight to her mother and spoke with firm clarity, explaining how Cain had shielded her in the forest, how he had fought when others retreated, and how he had stood between her and death inside the throne hall. Her voice did not tremble this time. She was not defending an enemy. She was defending truth. The queen listened carefully, and for the first time doubt entered her expression, not doubt about Cain's actions, but doubt about the story of humanity she had believed for so long. An advisor rushed in with urgent news that rebel forces had been traced to a hidden network within the Empire's own High Council. Powerful leaders had secretly supported the attacks, hoping to remove the royal bloodline and blame humans to push the war into full destruction. The information struck the chamber like another explosion. It meant the rebels had never intended peace, and they had used hatred of humans as a weapon to gain power. The queen slowly turned back to Cain, realizing that while her own council betrayed her, a human soldier had chosen honor. The truth was now impossible to ignore. Cain was not part of the rebellion, not part of a secret plan. He was simply a soldier who made a choice. The queen stepped closer to the medical platform and deactivated the energy barrier herself, a powerful gesture that shocked every guard present. She told Cain that in her empire actions defined loyalty more than words, and his actions had saved her daughter and her throne. Cain remained silent, unsure whether this was a test or a final judgment. The queen then did something no one in the chamber expected. She lowered her head slightly in respect, not as a ruler to a subject, but as a mother to the one who saved her child. The princess's eyes widened, and whispers spread among the shadow guard. Because such a gesture from their queen was rare and powerful, the queen announced that Cain would not be executed, he would not be imprisoned. Instead, he would stand before the full council and speak the truth of what happened. The Empire would hear from the human who chose mercy over hatred. Cain understood the risk immediately. If the council rejected him, he would die publicly, and his death could ignite even greater war. But if they listened, if even a few minds changed, then something new could begin. As the medical devices powered down and his restraints were removed, Cain slowly stood on his own feet, still wounded but unbroken. Outside the chamber, the capital city was repairing its shattered towers, and across the stars, human fleets prepared for retaliation, unaware that the fate of the war was now resting not on weapons, but on a single conversation that would soon take place in the highest hall of the alien empire. The Grand Council chamber of the alien empire had not been open to outsiders in over a century. Its towering crystal walls curved upward like frozen waves, glowing with the history of countless victories. Ancient symbols floated in the air above a circular floor where the most powerful leaders of the empire now stood in tense silence. At the center of the chamber stood Captain Elias Cain, unarmed and still healing, but standing straight despite the weight of 1,000 hostile eyes around him were council members dressed in silver and gold armor, their expressions cold and unreadable. At the highest point above them all stood the alien queen, her presence calm but powerful. The princess stood slightly behind her mother, watching every reaction carefully. The chamber doors sealed shut with a deep echo, cutting off the outside world. This decision would not only shape the empire, it could shape the galaxy. One of the elder counselors stepped forward and accused Cain of deception, claiming that no human could act without hidden motive. He argued that sparing the soldier would show weakness and invite invasion. Murmurs of agreement spread across the chamber. Cain remained silent until the queen ordered him to speak. His voice was steady as he explained the crash, the ambush, and the moment he chose to step forward. He did not speak of heroism or sacrifice. He spoke simply of instinct, saying that when he saw the princess surrounded, he did not see an alien enemy. He saw a young life about to be lost. Some council members scoffed at his words, calling them emotional and foolish, but others listened more closely, especially those who had seen the rebel destruction with their own eyes. The princess then stepped forward without permission. Breaking tradition, she described in detail how Kane shielded her from plasma fire, how he stood against rebels in the forest, and how he defended the throne room when palace guards were overwhelmed. Her voice grew stronger with each sentence, not as a royal giving command, but as a witness demanding truth. The chamber grew divided. Voices rose in anger and fear. Some leaders warned that showing mercy to a human would break the image of dominance that kept rival systems in line. Others argued that executing a soldier who saved the royal bloodline would stain the Empire's honor forever. The Queen listened to every argument without interruption, her eyes never leaving Kane. Then a final report arrived from military command. Human fleets had detected the capital assault and were mobilizing for retaliation. Warships were already moving towards Zarian. Expecting full conflict, the chamber fell silent at the news because everyone understood what that meant. If Kane were executed, humans would respond with fury, and the war would escalate beyond control. The Queen slowly descended from her elevated platform and walked to the center of the circle. Standing only a few steps from Kane, she turned to face her council and spoke with calm authority. She reminded them that strength was not only shown through destruction, but through wisdom. She revealed the confirmed betrayal within their own high council that supported the rebels. Proving that hatred had been manipulated for power, she declared that this human soldier had acted with more honor than those who plotted against their own throne. Gasps echoed around the chamber, because accusing high officials of betrayal during open council was a dangerous move. The Queen then faced Kane directly and asked him one final question. If released, would he return to his people and call for peace? Kane did not hesitate. He said he would report truthfully what he had seen, that the Empire was not made of monsters, and that peace was possible if both sides chose it. The sincerity in his voice carried through the chamber, not loud, but undeniable. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the Queen made her decision. She announced that Captain Elias Kane would be released immediately under royal protection. He would be escorted safely to human space with a formal message from the throne. The Empire would offer a ceasefire and demand open negotiations. Shock rippled through the council, but none dared challenge the final authority of their ruler. The Queen added that any council member found connected to the rebellion would face trial for treason, sending a clear warning to those who thrived on endless war. The princess looked at Kane with quiet relief, while the Shadow Guard stepped forward not to restrain him, but to stand beside him as allies for the first time. As the chamber doors slowly opened and light poured inside, Kane realized he had just witnessed something far more powerful than battle. He had witnessed an empire choose a different path. Outside in orbit, human fleets moved closer to attack range, unaware that the Queen's decision was already racing toward them, carrying the possibility of ending a war that had burned for years. And in that fragile moment between distrust and hope, the future of two civilizations balanced on the courage of one human and the wisdom of one queen. The royal transport ship moved silently through the upper atmosphere of Zarian, escorted by a formation of Shadow Guard fighters that once would have fired on any human vessel without warning. Inside the central chamber of the ship stood Captain Elias Kane, no longer in restraints, dressed in a newly restored version of his armor, the burn marks still visible as quiet proof of what had happened. Across from him stood the alien queen and her daughter, both calm, but aware that the next few hours could either secure peace or ignite total war. Beyond the planet's orbit, human warships had already formed battle lines, massive cruisers and destroyers charging weapons as they prepared to avenge what they believed was the capture or death of one of their own. Tension filled the vacuum of space like invisible lightning waiting to strike. As the transport crossed into open orbit, human scanners immediately locked onto it. Warning signals flashed across fleet command decks and targeting Systems began calculating firing solutions. On the bridge of the human flagship, admirals stared at the screen showing an alien royal vessel approaching under heavy escort, and in the center of its signal code was something impossible, a human identification beacon broadcasting Captain Kane's personal code. Confusion spread through the fleet because that code could not be faked easily. The Queen ordered her ship to halt at a safe distance, weapons powered down in clear view of every human sensor. Then she gave Kane the choice to transmit first. He stepped forward to the communication console, knowing millions of lives could depend on his next words. The channel opened across all human ships, and his face appeared on their screens, bruised but alive. A wave of shock moved through the fleet as officers recognized him. Kane spoke clearly and calmly, explaining the crash, the ambush, the rebel attack, and the truth about the internal betrayal within the alien empire. He told them the Queen had spared him, that she sought a ceasefire, and that continued fighting would only serve those who wanted endless destruction. Some commanders argued in the background, unwilling to trust alien promises, but Kane continued, saying he had seen their world burn from within and had watched a ruler choose honor over revenge. He finished by saying that sometimes strength meant lowering a weapon before pulling the trigger. Silence followed across the fleet channels because this was not the message they expected from a rescued soldier. Finally, the human fleet admiral requested direct communication with the alien Queen herself. The Queen stepped beside Kane and appeared on the shared transmission. Her voice was steady as she acknowledged the years of war, the losses on both sides, and the damage caused by fear and pride. She offered immediate ceasefire terms and open negotiation at neutral space, promising full exposure of the rebel conspiracy and punishment of those responsible. The tension stretched for several long minutes as human commanders reviewed the data she transmitted, including proof of the council members who had fueled conflict for personal power. When confirmation came that the evidence was real, the balance shifted. The human admiral slowly ordered all ships to stand down from attack formation. Weapons powered off one by one, and targeting locks disappeared from the royal transport. A fragile quiet filled the space between the two fleets, not forced by fear, but chosen through reason. Weeks later, negotiations began in a neutral star system under heavy security. Representatives from both civilizations sat across from each other for the first time without weapons drawn. The story of the battlefield rescue spread quickly through media networks on both sides, showing images of Kane shielding the alien princess during the palace assault. For many humans, he became a symbol of courage. But for many aliens, he became something even more surprising, proof that humanity was not the monster they had believed. Trade routes slowly reopened. Prisoner exchanges began, and joint patrol agreements were signed to prevent further rebel uprisings. The war that had once seemed endless began to fade into cautious cooperation. On Zarian, the Queen held a public ceremony in the restored throne hall, inviting human delegates to stand beside her people. In front of thousands, she honored Captain Elias Kane with the highest royal commendation ever given to an outsider, declaring that one act of courage had broken a chain of hatred that fleets could not shatter. Kane accepted the honor quietly, reminding both sides that peace would only survive if they protected it every day. The princess, now stronger and wiser from her experience, announced the creation of a joint academy program where young leaders from both civilizations would study together, ensuring that future generations would understand each other before fear could divide them again. As celebrations echoed across cities and star systems, Kane stood alone for a moment on a balcony overlooking the glowing alien skyline. Thinking about how close everything had come to total destruction, he had not planned to change a war. He had only followed a simple belief in the middle of chaos. Yet that simple choice had forced two powerful civilizations to look at each other differently above him. Human and alien ships now patrolled side by side against remaining rebel threats, not as enemies, but as allies. The galaxy remained vast and uncertain, but one truth had become clear. Sometimes history does not turn because of a massive fleet or a powerful weapon. Sometimes it turns because one soldier decides that saving a life matters more than winning a battle. And in that decision, Captain Elias Kane became the human who changed a war.